All right, everyone. So welcome and welcome back if you've been to one of our webinars before. My name is Keith Spencer, and I'm one of our career experts here at FlexJobs. I'm glad you all could join us for today's webinar topic, which is semi-retired, how to find part-time remote work. While we're giving everyone a minute to get in and get settled, please feel free to share where you're joining us from in the chat section. Before we dive into the webinar today, I'm going to cover a couple housekeeping items. Please don't worry about needing to take detailed notes, as this webinar will be recorded, and a link to the video and any resources we discuss during the presentation will be sent out to you within a week or so to the email address you used to register for today's event. Please note that the presentation has been pre-recorded, but the Q&A portion following the presentation will be conducted live with one of our career experts. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, please make sure to put it in the Q&A section of Big Marker, not the chat section. This really helps us keep track of questions in one place, and the Q&A section also allows you to click a thumbs up if someone else has asked a question that you're interested in, so that we can see which questions are the most popular. We probably won't be able to answer everyone's question today, but we can almost guarantee that you will learn something helpful. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Here is a quick overview of the topics we'll be covering today. We're going to look at demand for working during retirement by examining some trends related to the current demand for work from retired and semi-retired individuals, just to provide some context behind this webinar topic. We'll also talk about finding flexible companies and jobs by looking at some strategies for finding roles or organizations that could be a good fit for you and your working preferences. And we'll also discuss some resources for preparing your application materials. We'll talk about some things that are important to keep in mind when preparing those materials, and go over some links that are included in the resources section of the webinar today that could be helpful for you. And lastly, we will finish with our live audience Q&A. So let's go ahead and look at the current state of work for retired and semi-retired individuals. Over the last couple of years, there were quite a few reports that came out that were discussing this thing that was being dubbed as the Great Retirement trend, which started early on in the COVID-19 pandemic. And there were quite a few reasons behind this Great Retirement. Roughly a quarter of those who retired during this time cited factors related to the pandemic as contributing to their decision to retire a bit earlier than they may have otherwise. We also saw stocks and home values sort of swelling during this time, or during the time period leading up to the pandemic, which allowed workers to feel a bit more financially stable. We, of course, had 3 rounds of stimulus payments from the federal government, and you did also see some companies out there were sort of sweetening their retirement packages to convince employees to maybe retire a little early to help the company withstand the economic toll of the pandemic. And all of these factors contributed to these initial waves of the Great Retirement. Now, though, we are seeing a bit of a reversal of this. The number of workers who are unretiring has steadily increased since late 2021. And this is for a number of reasons, many of which are outlined on this slide. The severity of COVID-19 has sort of waned, and the number of workers in retirement age that are fully vaccinated has increased. So people are feeling safer about the idea of returning to work. Market volatility has also caused concern. There's a lot of uncertainty related to current events around the globe, which has caused some turmoil in financial markets. And we've seen stocks and bonds fare poorly as compared to previous years. Inflation is also a big concern for many. Households have had to cope with surprising rates of inflation, which has created less stability in regard to their retirement savings. And people are also concerned about the potential for a recession sometime in the near future. The job market right now is sort of an enticement rather than a concern, which is bringing some people out of retirement. While we've seen quite a few large scale layoffs in certain industries, we are still seeing pretty steady hiring rates across the market. We're also seeing wages increase and the number of remote, hybrid, and flexible opportunities increase as well. So these factors, some of which are cause for concern, some are enticements, have created this wave of unretirement that we're now seeing. Some additional things that are, maybe motivating people to unretire include having the ability to supplement your income or enhance your retirement nest egg, which can help combat the impact of inflation. You also are able to, use your expertise and experience to keep your mind and body active and engaged. Some people end up retiring and find that they miss having the opportunity to focus on new challenges or help people or engage in stimulating work. Some people also decide to travel during retirement, and having the opportunity to work a flexible part-time job, it allows people to earn money to support this type of lifestyle as they're traveling. This is often referred to as being a digital nomad. You may have heard of that phrase before. Coming out of retirement also gives people the chance to kind of give back in meaningful ways or maybe explore new purposes and passions, which is appealing for a lot of folks. Let's say, for example, maybe you worked in private business your whole career and now you want to work for a nonprofit organization. That gives you a chance to kind of make a positive difference in the world while also supplementing your income. And, theoretically, this might not be true for everyone, but, at this point in your career, you might be at a point where you don't necessarily have to worry too much about a high salary or an important job title. So that kind of opens up the options that are available to you. And then lastly, staving off boredom. Similar to staying active and engaged, some people find retirement kind of boring and want to engage in something meaningful or stimulating as an antidote to this boredom. So now let's go ahead and talk about some strategies and methods for finding flexible companies and jobs that could maybe bring to you some of those benefits that we just discussed. Networking is always a great strategy to include in your job search, especially, if you are a retired or semi-retired individual who has had an extensive career, because you likely have a larger network than someone who is maybe only just starting their career. So with more people working remotely these days, there's a solid chance that you might already have, a friend or a family member or maybe a former coworker who is working remotely, the way that you would like to be working. So as you're thinking about networking, maybe reaching out to your current network or trying to contact some people you've never actually met before, think about shifting the conversation a little bit. Make sure that you aren't just asking people what they do, the company that they work for, how they got to where they are, but also ask them some questions about how they do the work that they do. Do they get to work from home? What's their schedule like and how is it set? Have they ever freelanced or done a part-time side hustle? You might be able to learn from and make connections with people who are already in the type of work that you want to be involved in. So it can definitely be advantageous to do some networking, try to learn from others to see what kind of strategies they might recommend that you can then employ. And, if you're someone who is maybe a bit shy or sort of introverted, as I consider myself, networking can sometimes feel intimidating, but you want to kind of treat this as an information gathering opportunity. You're not just out there trying to ask people for favors. You are trying to ask questions and expand your knowledge, maybe gain some new perspectives and make new connections with people that can offer good ideas or solid advice. And it might also provide you with some job leads that you might not have found otherwise. So networking is definitely a strategy that I always recommend. Also important to start thinking about, potential job titles that could be appealing to you, or some companies, which we'll discuss on the next couple of slides here. But on this slide, you'll see some common flexible and remote work fields for unretired individuals, some of which might be appealing to you. Do keep in mind that this is not a comprehensive list, so you're not limited to the job titles on this slide. It's just a sampling of some of the more common titles that semi-retired individuals have pursued in recent years. And some of these might be fields you never directly worked in, but now, because of your depth of experience and the amount of transferable skills that you possess and have gained throughout your career, you could be considered highly qualified for these types of jobs. Like, for example, administrative or customer service there. For administrative, maybe you've been in sort of a operations manager type role in the past, and so you know how all these puzzle pieces fit together, and you know how to streamline workflows and maximize operational effectiveness. Those are skills that would be incredibly beneficial in an administrative role. Customer service, maybe you've spent a lot of your career interacting with clients or customers, building relationships, helping people. That would make you well qualified for a role in customer service. And nonprofit and philanthropy also on this list. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of unretired individuals want to pursue new passions. So working for a nonprofit organization could be a way to explore some of those new passions. And it's worth mentioning, one concern that many job seekers coming out of retirement sometimes have is they might be viewed as being overqualified for certain roles that they might be applying to. Some strategies you can employ to help kind of mitigate this potential issue is you can try to maybe tone down some of the job titles or responsibilities you've had in the past on your resume. You don't necessarily need to highlight your most important responsibilities that you've held. You can just focus on the things that are going to be most relevant and applicable for this new type of role. If you've had, responsibilities where, like, let's maybe say you were HR director, instead you could maybe dial back that job description and just put, like human resources or something as your job title, just so that you're not kind of intimidating the people that are reading your resume or appearing potentially overqualified. But you can also emphasize in your cover letter and in interviews that, at this point in your career, you're really looking for an opportunity to be more of an individual contributor rather than, maybe leading strategies or managing and supervising teams. And you could emphasize too that the experience you have had up to this point will make you an asset to the company in that individual contributor type of role. In terms of finding jobs that are on this list, or maybe other fields or titles that might be more appealing to you, some strategies that you can employ: you can browse by company name on FlexJobs, or look at the top 100 companies to watch for remote jobs article that we publish each year. Sometimes it's helpful to start that company first kind of approach. It's sometimes known as like the reverse job search, where you're targeting specific companies that are appealing to you for one reason or another, and then keeping an eye on their hiring page on their website. Maybe there are some companies out there that you've worked either directly or indirectly with in the past, and this can sometimes give you an in or something to talk about in your cover letter or interview. And one thing that's really nice about how remote work has expanded in recent years is it often kind of removes those geographic barriers that we may have encountered in the past. So you could find that there's a company out there that you really like that is maybe located in a different state or a different country, but they have some remote options that could be, available for you or for which you might be eligible. Networking, like we discussed on the previous slide, is also a great way to identify companies or fields that you might want to work in. And don't don't forget to tap into your alumni network. You can search for your alumni, search for alumni through your alma mater's LinkedIn page to find people working for certain organizations or in specific fields that you could potentially reach out to. And then you can also conduct what I call a more assertive job search by specifically searching for job titles, keywords, functions, skills. We'll talk more about this later, but all of these are good approaches to finding potential jobs or companies that you're interested in. And, do be mindful that not all companies are as explicit as we'd like them to be regarding their most remote or flexible opportunities. So you want to keep an eye out for different phrases that they might have on their hiring page or sometimes included in job descriptions like work-life balance or flexible career options. Sometimes if you see some of these phrases, even if they're not explicitly stating that this role is remote, it can mean that they have, remote options available. So just be mindful of that. So you're trying to find roles that will really kind of fit your needs and your preferences. Ageism is also a common concern for retired and semi-retired folks looking for remote and flexible options. We've actually combed through the FlexJobs database and identified 20 employers with flexible options that are great places for older workers, and they are listed on this slide. And you'll see both large and small companies are included, and quite a few recognizable names on this list. And these employers have also been certified as age-friendly by an organization known as the Age-Friendly Institute. Since 2005, the Age-Friendly Institute has identified companies that are committed to being strong places for people over the age of 50 to work. And through the Institute's certified age-friendly employer program, hundreds of companies have earned this credential. So if you're considering the reverse job search, looking for companies first, rather than searching for job title or skill or function first, and concerned about ageism, these companies and others that are listed on the Age Friendly Institute's website might be a great place for you to start. You don't need to limit yourself simply to those companies that are certified age friendly. It's also helpful to look for companies that are regularly hiring for remote, part-time, and flexible work. Based on FlexJobs posting data, this is our current list of the top 30 companies hiring for part-time, remote, and work from home jobs. Also, some pretty well-known companies on this list, and a little bit of crossover actually between this list and the age-friendly companies list. So you do have a lot of options to consider. So when searching directly for job postings or taking that more assertive approach, like I mentioned earlier, I always recommend to folks that they use the advanced search feature on FlexJobs. This allows you to filter your search preferences before you ever even hit that search button. And it helps you make sure that the results that you are presented with are more likely to meet your needs and preferences. And it saves you time by not having to sift through hundreds or even thousands of job postings just to find the right job titles or postings that fit you. And to access this feature on FlexJobs, just click the link titled Advanced in the upper right-hand corner next to the keyword and location box at the top of each FlexJobs page. And you can use a variety of filters that you'd like, but the ones that I recommend paying closest attention to include using that keyword box. This allows you to search by job title, job function, skills that you maybe want to use in your next job. Like, for example, maybe like training or project management or communication. Those might be some of your best skills. Or you could go with some more technical or job specific skills. Like maybe you're into accounting and you want to search for QuickBooks. You're able to search by lots of different keywords there. I also make sure that you are selecting the level, or I also recommend making sure that you are selecting the level of remote work that you're seeking from the remote work level box. You'll see 100% remote, hybrid remote, option for remote, and no remote work. as options in that drop down. And you can also select more than one. Like, let's say that 100% remote work is your preference, but you're also open to the idea of hybrid. So you could select both of those as filters for your advanced search there. Also, under work schedule, you can select full-time, part-time, flexible schedule, or alternative schedule. So make sure you are specifying which of those is your top preference. And you also want to make sure that you are including your location, whether US based or international, for reasons that we will discuss on the next slide. But some other options to use, of course, you could look for job types, career level, education level, things like that. You do want to be careful to not select too many filters, or you might not see enough results once you hit that search button. Usually you want to see somewhere around 10 to 50 results, which is a very manageable number of results to work through. You can also play around with this feature to refine your searches so you're seeing results that are a close match to your needs and preferences, and making sure you're getting sort of a manageable number of results. Then you can save the search. Once you save the search, and you can save multiple searches, I should add, they will then show up on your dashboard in the Save Searches drop-down menu. So this helps save you time in the long run, and also makes it easier for you to search once you have your filters adjusted appropriately and your top searches saved. Because job searching can be very overwhelming, very time consuming. So any little tips and tricks that can save you time are worth mentioning. So I wanted to point that out. Okay, so location matters. Like I sort of alluded to on the last slide, you may or may not already be aware, but location does matter in remote work. A lot of people assume that if they're working from home, location isn't relevant, but the vast majority of remote job listings have some type of location requirement. This doesn't mean that they're trying to pull, a bait and switch on you. It's just that different tax, employment, and labor laws might limit the locations in which remote companies are able to hire. Other jobs might want you to be in a particular state because of certain licenses or credentials that you may need to have, or maybe they want you to be able to occasionally travel to a permanent office or visit clients in the area. So a lot of different reasons behind this, but location does matter. So you always want to make sure that you are noting the location so you aren't accidentally applying for roles that you aren't actually eligible for. And you will see on FlexJobs postings with specific states or countries mentioned, as well as ones marked US national or work from anywhere, which are more broad in their location requirements. Our site highlights location requirements quite a bit better than most job search boards out there. So just make sure, if you're using other job search websites as well, that you're investigating potential location requirements carefully. So again, you're not applying for something that you might not actually be eligible for. It's also important to think about the search terms that you are using when looking for remote jobs. FlexJobs uses remote, hybrid, and flexible as the main terms for work from home or partially work from home jobs. So when you're searching for remote jobs on other online job boards, some phrases will yield better results than others. But there are also some things you want to be aware of, as certain terms can sometimes indicate a potential scam. It is important to note that FlexJobs does vet and research 100% of the job postings on the website, but you do want to use a discerning eye when looking for remote or hybrid or flexible jobs on other websites. Historically, phrases like work from home and work at home were mostly used by scammers offering fake remote jobs. However, it's gotten a little bit complicated in recent years because there has been an increase in the use of those terms for legitimate jobs since the pandemic increased, the prevalence of remote work. But you just want to note that these types of terms can be legitimate, but can also indicate scams occasionally. So you want to be cautious and do your due diligence. We'll talk a bit more on the next few slides about, verifying that job postings are legitimate. One nice thing that that some other job search sites are starting to do is they are allowing the use of remote filters. So this is definitely a good option if you are searching outside of FlexJobs. And then also lastly, as we touched on in the previous slide, or in a previous slide, I should say, consider searching by different skills, both hard or technical skills like industry specific skills or maybe certain software programs, as well as soft or transferable skills like communication, management, training, collaboration, things like that. Just, having an expansive search is a good idea because it can yield more results that could meet your needs and preferences. Okay, so in terms of avoiding scams, these are some additional signs that a job posting could potentially be a scam. Scams are unfortunately a very real part of the job search, and scammers do have a bit of a tendency to target remote or work from home jobs. The items on this slide are some of the primary warning signs that you may have encountered a scam. If there is no company name or a very kind of generic email address listed, or maybe there's a vague job description or no job description at all, just sort of a job title. This one should hopefully be obvious, but if they're asking you for money or very personal information, like right from the start, that's kind of a giveaway that that's a scam. If they have a better than could be imagined salary listed or a very unrealistic salary listed, good sign that's a scam. If they offer you the job immediately or maybe just really quickly after one brief interview, that kind of urgency can indicate a scam. And then sometimes you see copycat companies. So, you do like the examples there of the fake and real URL. You do want to be paying attention to those URLs, making sure that, they are legitimate, kind of verifying the accuracy of them. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to do more research to better protect yourself on the next slide. But, the bottom line is you should trust your instincts. Just encountering one of these might not necessarily indicate that it is a scam, but it's a good hint that it could be. So, you do want to make sure you're doing some research. If you feel like something is off and that research hasn't removed your concerns, chances are you should trust your gut reaction there. People who are scammed almost always report that there was a point in the process where they thought something felt off. Maybe the employer was acting strangely or something didn't seem right, but they kept going because they wanted the job. So again, trust your instincts, make sure you're doing your due diligence, doing some research and investigation for every job posting and guarding yourself against potential scams. Here are two quick sort of safe search methods or safe research methods that you could use to investigate a job or a company that you maybe are concerned about, or again, you just want to do your due diligence. The first thing you could do, you could try a keyword search for the company's name or the job title with the keyword scam, SCAM. This might help you uncover local news reports or Better Business Bureau complaints or FBI warnings or other evidence of fraudulent activity. The second method, and this is the one that I tend to use most myself, is just to seek out the company's hiring page on their website. You can search for the company's name and the keyword careers to find their real career website or career hiring page, and then compare the web addresses you found with the one you were potentially concerned about, just to make sure they match up. And again, I recommend doing this for any job, regardless of how large or well known the company is, or whether you think it might be a scam or not. Just make sure that their hiring page reflects the job posting that you found, and verify that it's legitimate. All right, so now we'll finish up with some tips and resources for preparing your application materials. Do keep in mind you want to apply for jobs where you meet at least 60 to 70% of the qualifications. More is better, but this 60 to 70% baseline is a good one to keep in mind. Okay, so we're not going to cover every single aspect of preparing your materials. We just don't have enough time for that today. But I do want to point out that there are a lot of fantastic resources on the FlexJobs site, and we went ahead and narrowed down some of the most important and relevant ones to our topic today and have listed them in the resources tab here in big marker. The first one that I alluded to on the last slide is comparing your qualifications to the job description. Use that 60 to 70% baseline that I mentioned. Employers don't expect candidates to match 100% of the qualifications. You can think of the job description as sort of their ideal wish list, but it is still smart to see how your qualifications compare to that description. And the T approach resource that is in the resources tab will help you with thoroughly analyzing how your qualifications compare to that job description. Next on the list is building any needed skills. As you review job descriptions, pay attention to see if there are commonalities in terms of skills that you might be missing or maybe aren't as strong with as you would like them to be. It could be smart to invest some time and energy in learning or honing some of these skills. We have quite a few technology tutorials, for example, which are included in the resources tab that can help you increase the number of remote collaboration tools with which you're familiar. That's often a big concern for semi-retired or retired individuals, is learning some new technology programs that have appeared over the last couple of years that maybe you haven't gotten to use before. So definitely some good resources there. There are also some websites out there like Coursera, Udemy, or LinkedIn Learning that are pretty popular where you can build other skills. And all of those sites typically have free and paid options. So you could find, some very cost-effective ways to build some new skills. So consider taking some online classes or training courses if you're missing certain skills. Another resource in the resources section is the list of FlexJobs samples and templates. This resource is great for finding a wide range of examples and guides for creating effective resumes and cover letters and follow-up emails and other specific materials to help you with the application process. Also, I want to point out, included in those samples and templates is a fantastic guide for tailoring your resume for specific job postings. I always recommend tailoring your resume, tailoring your cover letter for each application. So, comb through that job description and make sure that you are showcasing keywords and phrases and skills and qualifications that are mentioned in the job posting into your resume and your cover letter. This helps with applicant tracking systems that might be screening for specific keywords, but it also makes your resume and cover letter more relevant to your specific audience. So it's kind of like taking a quality over quantity approach, making sure to tailor each application, each resume, cover letter for that specific job posting. We also have quite a few webinars listed in the resource section. These webinar recordings, as well as future webinars coming up on our schedule, will help you learn more about some of these topics we've mentioned today. And then lastly, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's important to try to combat potential issues related to ageism in the job search. So some easy things that you can do to guard against ageism include only going back about 10 to 15 years in your professional experience section. Avoid using an objective to start your resume and instead maybe use a professional summary section. Avoid addressing your cover letter to whom it may concern. That's sort of an outdated phrase. You could instead use like dear hiring manager or dear search committee. And also, of course, omitting your graduation dates for any degrees that you may have. Okay, so just to recap a little bit here and talk about some action steps that you can take going forward, remember to research jobs and companies that could be appealing for you. Use that advanced search feature on FlexJobs to improve the quality of your search and save you some time. Try to network and connect with others within your network to learn about some strategies and potential options out there. Make sure that you are comparing your skills and qualifications to job descriptions that are appealing to you and taking the time to maybe update your skills or learn new skills if needed. Make sure that you are also updating your application materials, and your online presence, trying to showcase your most relevant work and guarding yourself against ageism. And then also, stay vigilant to avoid potential scams. Reminder to do your due diligence and research and investigate companies to make sure job postings are legitimate. And then lastly, once you kind of have all these steps in order, everything in place, get after it and start applying for remote and flexible jobs that could be a good fit for you in your semi-retirement. Okay, so we will go ahead now and move into our Q&A portion. Just as a quick reminder, a copy of the recording as well as resources presented will be emailed to you within the next week or so. Do be sure to check your spam folder just in case it gets filtered there. For even more tips, tricks, and resources, I recommend going to the FlexJobs blog, which includes a vast amount of free articles, resources, webinars, and videos for members and non-members alike. So, okay, let's now go ahead and open up to your questions. Everyone, we are now going to move into our Q&A portion of the webinar. Before we really get rolling, could someone let me know in the chat section if you're able to hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So my name is Keith Spencer, and I'm one of our career experts here at FlexJobs. Just as a reminder, if you have a question, please make sure that you're putting it in the Q&A section, not the chat section, so I can see all the questions in one place. And if you see a question that you want to hear the answer to, feel free to click that thumbs up. So our first question here made me chuckle a little bit. So this person was saying that their first interview for a part-time job after, retiring 3 months ago was conducted by a 20-something individual. They asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And this person was tempted to maybe give a little bit of a sarcastic answer here, which I can understand that temptation. And they were curious if I have any advice on how to answer this question. So my advice with answering this question, regardless of whether or not you think your career will extend that 5 years, is try to focus, on that position, on that company. As was mentioned in the webinar, like when discussing if you're worried about being potentially overqualified, what I would do in this situation is I would probably try to emphasize why you want this individual contributor role. So, your goal for the next 5 years is to be in this kind of individual contributor role. You're not necessarily saying, well, I hope to have this great career trajectory, because that aspect of your career might be behind you at this point. So, I would say something like, well, in 5 years time, I really hope to be in this type of a position where I can be that individual contributor, and then mention some reasons why. Maybe it's a specific type of projects you like to be working on, or maybe it's a client facing role and you really like to help people, or whatever it is about that role that excites you, even if that's not realistically your 5 years from now goal. You do want to think a little bit about kind of playing the game, so to speak. What does the employer want to hear in this situation? So I myself would just kind of focus on why I want to be in that type of role, what it is about this specific role I'm interviewing for that attracts me, maybe something about the company as well that is appealing to me, and kind of focus on those types of things. So totally understand why you might want to have a little bit of a sarcastic response there to that kind of question. But I recommend definitely kind of playing the game, so to speak, a little bit, and focusing on the role and the company there, how it kind of aligns with your goals. But very good question. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so here's a question, and I actually saw a couple comments about something similar. So asking about what that T approach is. So that there's a link to that T approach in the resources section. It's the one titled "Comparing Your Qualifications to the Job Description." So that is, it's actually a spreadsheet that kind of gives you a framework that you can use, where you will sort of outline your own qualifications, your own own experience, your best skills, things like that, and then the things that are mentioned in the job description. So you can kind of do that sort of one-to-one analysis there. So that's the T approach, that resource about comparing your qualifications there. And it's just a good one to help you kind of make sure that you're at least that 60 to 70% baseline that was mentioned during the webinar. Again, as mentioned, like if you hit more of the qualifications, awesome. That means you're even better candidate for that role. But it's always good to kind of compare those qualifications, see if you're at that 60 to 70% baseline before you apply for that job, because it's not so much a matter of will I be considered or not, but it's also like, saving your own time. If there's something that you're only like 30% qualified for, chances are pretty good that you won't be asked for an interview for that type of role. So, your time is valuable, so you don't want to waste time, necessarily applying for jobs where you might not qualify. So comparing your qualifications to the job description can be really valuable. It's also helpful because, it gets you to analyze that job description a bit more carefully. So there might be things that you've done, but you haven't listed on your resume. And so that can help spark some reminders. Oh, I need to make sure that I'm emphasizing that on my resume a little bit more, or maybe mentioning that in my cover letter or in an interview to make sure that you're showing that skills alignment, which is really important. Good question. Okay, so we have another question here. Would giving your location be too limiting for people who might be willing to relocate even for a remote position? I can definitely understand the sort of allure of maybe omitting your location on your resume, but I do recommend including that, because some employers and even some applicant tracking systems might kind of count you out or rank you lower if you omit that location entirely. So what I would do in this situation is I would make sure to list my current location, and then maybe in my professional summary section, definitely in my cover letter, but maybe also in my professional summary section, kind of throw in a line about how I'm passionate about doing X, Y, and Z, and would be willing to relocate for the right position. So, kind of getting around that issue of like, hey, I might not be living in the exact location you need me to be right now, but, I would be willing to locate. But then also, too, as mentioned with the advanced search option there, listing your location so that you are seeing jobs that you would be eligible for. So, you could find ones that have your state or your country specifically listed, or maybe say US national if you're US based, or work from anywhere with that little world map logo, so that you're finding ones that would allow you to or you would be eligible for. Because great that you're willing to relocate, but that also puts a big burden on you, and not everybody is able to necessarily relocate. So just some things to keep in mind there. But you could definitely mention that in your summary section and your cover letter, or at the very least mention that in your cover letter if you are willing to relocate. Okay. They're a way to see US based companies that allow for international work. So that's a little tricky. Let me go ahead here and share my screen. So you can use in the advanced search, I'm going to pull that up here. So you can use the advanced search to help you find jobs that allow for work from anywhere, but it isn't necessarily going to give you specifically US based companies. So what I would do is I would uncheck this box if you are not located in the US, and just keep this box checked here. Because then when you click for search, you will see that logo. Let's just do the for an example, you will see this here, the work from anywhere with the little world map icon there. So that would be my recommendation there. Not going to necessarily show you US based companies specifically, but then as you are seeing the companies listed here, you could do some investigation and find, where they are based. So it doesn't necessarily streamline it as nicely as you might like, or as I feel you might like with that question, but it does, at least give you some steps to get there. So hopefully that is helpful for you. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back to our Q&A list here. Okay, so here's another question. Does it differentiate between freelance and part-time? I don't want freelance. I want steady part-time. So this is a good question, and I'm going to actually couple this with, we had another question was asking about, is there a filter which allows you to search for jobs which include benefits, or should you just use the keyword search? So let me actually go ahead and reshare my screen. We'll get back to that advanced search option. One moment here. I want to pull that back up. Okay, and I'll share my screen. So let's get back to the advanced search here. So our question here was asking about differentiating between freelance and part-time. And then we also had that other question about benefits. So what I would recommend here is going to the jobs type box here. And then, you can select between freelance, temporary, and employee. So if you want something that's a bit steadier, something that is likely to, although not guaranteed to offer benefits, I would select employee here in the job type. And then work schedule is where you can then select between full-time, part-time, flexible schedule. And remember, you can select multiple here. So if I wanted part-time and flexible schedule, or if I wanted part-time but was maybe open to full-time, you could select multiple there. But getting back to those two questions, selecting employee is your best bet for finding things that are a bit more steady and potentially offer benefits. If you're looking for freelance, more often than not, they're not going to offer benefits, and temporary, same kind of thing there. So selecting employee in the job type box is your best bet there. Very good questions though. Let's see if we can get one more question answered quickly here. Okay, so we have somebody asking, should a degree requirement be a deterrent to applying to a job if you don't have that degree but have most of the skills asked for? Really good question here. A couple things to consider. So, often in job postings, they will have preferred qualifications and then required qualifications. If you see a specific degree listed in the required qualifications, then for me personally, I probably would not, potentially waste my time, quote unquote, on applying for that job. Now, if it is a job that you are really, really interested in, and you feel like you're hitting 80 to 90% of the qualifications, minus that degree, you certainly could still include, or you still could apply for that job. Now, if you have an advanced degree, like a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, do make sure to still list that on your resume in the education section. If you don't have an advanced degree at all, you could put something like 15 plus years of experience in lieu of a bachelor's degree. That can help with the applicant tracking system that might be searching for the word or the phrase bachelor's degree. Could also help emphasize to the employer, like, look, I bring a lot of talent to the table, a lot of experience to the table, even though I might be missing this degree. So that's an option as well. But you do run that little bit of a risk that you're just going to get looked over pretty quickly if you're missing that degree, or a degree in general, if it's mentioned as a required qualification. Now, if it's listed as a preferred qualification, I say go for it. If you're missing, a couple of the preferred qualifications, chances are you're still a solid candidate for that role. You could be considered for that role. But if you're missing, quite a few of the required qualifications, then it's a steeper hill to climb, so to speak. But very good question there. Hope that answer was helpful. We're a couple minutes over time, so we are going to go ahead and draw to a close. As a reminder, the recording of our webinar today, including the resources in that resources section, will be emailed out to you within a week or so. Do be sure to keep an eye on that spam folder in your email inbox, just in case it gets filtered there. But really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. Hope we shared some helpful information. Do consider joining us for one of our future webinars, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks.